So you're thinking about making a move, but you don't really love the city life. You kind of want to be more spread out and you want to have a slower pace of life. Well, maybe consider St. John's, Michigan. It's in the northern part of the Lansing, Michigan area. St. John's is a very spread out place, lots of land, lots of options. It's located within minutes of the Lansing, Michigan area. Or you have the option of going up to Mount Pleasant, which is about a 45-minute drive. Lots of options to be able to consider. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the pros and cons of living in St. John's, Michigan. And be sure to stay tuned until the very end for the last con, because I feel it is definitely one of the most important things for you to consider as you're looking to make a move. So let's get started with this next episode of Lansing, Michigan Life right now. Hey everybody, Troy Seifert here with the Capital Area Real Estate Specialist in the Greater Lansing, Michigan area. I'm a top producing real estate agent in the Greater Lansing area, and I get phone calls all the time from people who are just like you watching this channel, people who are looking to make a move here. I get calls from the West Coast of the United States, from the East Coast of the United States, even from around the world, people who are looking to potentially make a move here. And if that is you and you're looking to move here in 9 days, 90 days, or 9 months from now, I would love to be able to talk with you about your real estate goals anytime. So feel free to call me, text me, email me, or schedule a Zoom call with me. I would love to, again, be able to maybe even talk with you face to face about your real estate goals. And if this is your first time on the channel or 100th time on the channel, I would love to be able to talk with you and interact with you as well. So please like this video or leave a comment whenever you would like to. Also, if you haven't done so already, I would love it if you would like this video, if you like the content on this channel. It kind of gives me an idea of what people like. And also, if you haven't already, if you would subscribe to my channel, that way you can be notified when a new episode goes live on this channel. Okay, so I'm getting into the pros and the cons of St. John's, Michigan. St. John's, Michigan is a suburb of the Greater Lansing, Michigan area. It's located on the north side, probably about 20 miles to 25 miles north. So it's gonna take you a good 25 to 30 minutes to be able to get there right from the center of downtown Lansing. It is just north of DeWitt, Michigan, which is another suburb I have featured. You can check out the pros and cons and the blog tour at any time. But St. John's is about 15 minutes north of that. But depending on where you're at in St. John's, it could be another 15, 20 minutes north, because St. John's does go pretty far north. And you'll hear that in some of our pros and cons, how far north it goes, and then even where the school district is, how far south it goes. It's really spread out compared to a lot of the suburbs. So let me go ahead and dive in with the first one. So the first pro when it comes to living in the city of St. John's has to do with the fall season in St. John's. The fall season. I feel that St. John's is the most beautiful place to be during the fall season. And they also have things to do during the fall season, such as Uncle John's Cider Mill. And if you followed my vlog tour on St. John's, I visit Uncle John's. I wasn't there during the fall, I was more there during the summer, but during the fall, it can get quite busy. So if you're not into huge crowds, you might not love that. But going to Uncle John's during the fall season, that's like true fall right there. And you also are close to the 127 freeway that is just lined up with trees that when the leaves change, you just see beautiful color. And I just think nothing says fall like being in St. John's. So that is definitely a huge perk. I mean, there are some other fall things to do in Lansing, and even though it's like 20, 25 minutes north, there's just something about St. John's in the fall because of being so close to the cider mill and just having that beautiful scenery as you're driving on the highway. Nothing like it. So that would be the first pro. Now I'm going to go to the first con for living in St. John's, and that has to do with its lack of diversity. So in the most recent census, St. John's had 92% white Caucasian people. And when you compare it to some of the other suburbs I've talked about in the Greater Lansing metropolitan area, that's not a lot of diversity. So I think that like maybe when I featured Mason, maybe it was a little bit higher for Mason, but if you're looking for diversity, you're really not gonna have it in the St. John's area. So the second pro I wanna talk about in St. John's has to do with the convenient access to highways. So in St. John's, there's a major highway that goes north and south called 127 North. I think I've talked about it a couple times, right? So there's a couple exits going right on that freeway, which can take you down south to Lansing, down south like 25 minutes. But can drive 70, 75 miles an hour that way. Or you can also take it to go all the way up north. It basically is the start to taking you to some of the up north places like Traverse City, like Petoskey, like Mackinac Island. And so because it's like one of the northernmost cities in the greater Lansing, Michigan area, a lot of people like being able to have faster access. Like if they have a cottage that they want to go to over the weekend, a lot of people have it further north. So they will just go right onto the freeway. They don't have to take any other freeways and just drive straight north. So the second con that I want to address, how we talked about the convenient access to the highway, I think that's a con is it's not going to be convenient more than likely for your commute. St. John's doesn't have a lot of jobs, a lot of corporations in their area. It's a lot more localized. So more than likely you're gonna have to work in Lansing, or maybe even possibly you might have to work in Alma or Mount Pleasant, wherever you would be. So everything's gonna be about a 25 or 30 minute commute. And that's not great for gas money. It's gonna take longer to be able to get there up and back. So some of you who are from a major city, you're gonna think like, oh man, 25, 30 minutes, like that is super easy. I had to sit in traffic and sometimes it's an hour one way and an hour back. Okay, and great. If you're from those areas, then your commute might be cut in half from here. So pro number 3 has to do with being centrally located between Lansing and Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Why does that matter? Well, if you're a professor watching this episode and you're looking at maybe 2 or 3 different colleges in the area, Mount Pleasant has Central Michigan University, which isn't quite as large as Michigan State, which is in East Lansing, right down to Lansing. And either way, like it's gonna take 30 to 35 minutes to get to MSU. And then if you are working in Mount Pleasant, that might take you about 40 to 45 minutes. Also, there's another college, Alma College, that is just south of Central Michigan University. So again, another college option. So if you're a professor here and maybe you're looking at Central Michigan University, well, maybe St. John's, maybe you should consider that because maybe your prices might be cheaper and it'll be closer to maybe getting to Lansing because Lansing has a lot more to offer than what Mount Pleasant would for entertainment and shopping and all of that. So just some things for you to consider, but being centrally located between Lansing, which is a major city, and then also having Mount Pleasant gives you options of where can I work and where can I commute to. Con number 3, on the flip side, is that you are 30 minutes away from any shopping, dining, or entertainment. Yes, so let me share a story with you that I think is incredibly funny that has to do with this con right here, okay? So one of my former coworkers, him and his wife came from California and they were moving to Michigan for a job. And they decided to potentially move to St. John's, Michigan. So when they drove into St. John's, Michigan, my coworker's wife literally said, oh, please don't tell me we're moving to Mayberry. So I will tell you this, it is not Mayberry like Andy Griffith show potentially is, but if you compare St. John's to any major city, it is going to appear like Mayberry. So what do you have in St. John's? In St. John's, you have one strip on a road that goes 55, 60 miles an hour. You have a Walmart, you have an Applebee's, you have lots of fast food places, you have your Kroger, which is your grocery store, some gas stations. Then you have like a downtown that you can, when you turn left or right on that road, there's access to the downtown there. And there's some shops and there's some local shops, some local eateries. But other than that, that's about it. For the exception of like Uncle John's Cider Mill, which is further north and it's probably another 15, 20 minutes to get there. That's all you really got in St. John's. So that's why it comes across as Mayberry to some people. If you want to see a movie, if you want to eat at a really super nice restaurant, have lots of different options to choose from. If you want to be able to go to some of the major shopping places like Kohl's or Hobby Lobby that's down there, in Lansing. If you want to be able to go to any of those stores, you have to travel to Lansing, and that's going to be 25 to 30 minutes. So you almost got to plan a day of driving down there and being able to shop. So in the city of Mason, which is another suburb that I've talked about, that's the opposite direction. It's south of Lansing, almost the same distance. But in Mason, they at least have a bowling alley that you can go to called City Limits. But in St. John's, there's nothing really, guys. There's not a lot there. So Something that you just had to keep in mind when moving to the city is it's not gonna have a whole lot. It'll have your basic fast food stuff. There'll be an Applebee's, there'll be a Walmart. You'll have enough to be able to like get through your week. So what I would suggest is maybe you would want to venture down to Lansing for all that stuff because you're not gonna really find it in St. John's. Pro number 4, this is kind of the flip side of the con that I just talked about, okay? Some people might see that for St. John's, a pro would be having a small town feel and a slower pace. And if you are somebody that doesn't like hustle and bustle, then St. John's would definitely be for you. And there's about 7,700 people that live in the city of St. John's. So if you are somebody that would rather be a little bit more spread out, you don't have neighbors right on top of you in every neighborhood, it could be great for you. And you might be able to get to know more people because there's less people in the area. However, some people could see it as a negative because they could see that, hey, I'm so spread out in the country, I don't really have a lot of neighbors, I can't really get to know people. So depending on your personality, this could be a huge pro. If you just wanna be inside your house at all times and you don't wanna see anybody, St. John's is the place for you. No, I don't mean that, because St. John's does have a city and they do have homes that are built close together. They do have neighborhoods, but it is more spread out than any of the other suburbs. Con number 4, my con is that there is no hustle and bustle here. There is no urgency. So if you're somebody who's fast paced, you need to have things to do. You need to have places to go. You need to be able to have crowds around you. You need to have large gatherings. St. John's might not be the place for you because there's not a lot of hustle and bustle. The most crowds that you will see throughout the entire year in St. John's would be at the Mint Festival, which happens every August, second week of August. There's a huge festival they do at the St. John's City Park. So if you want to go to large crowds, you have one event during the year that you can go to, okay? So for those of you who like bigger crowds, faster pace, more things to do, St. John's might not be the place for you. So the pro number 5 is that the cost of housing is cheaper in St. John's than many other suburbs. So year to date, St. John's average purchase price is $290,000. $290,000, that's not bad at all. Many of the suburbs that I have featured are $50,000 to $100,000 more for the average home sale. So that is great, $290,000. The other thing you have to consider with the cost of housing are the taxes. And in St. John's, if you decide to move to one of the townships that's outside of the city of St. John's, your mills are gonna be far less. It's only gonna be like 30 mills. And I'll explain that again here, how the taxes would work. 30 mills, and then if you lived in the city of St. John's, your mills would be closer to 40 mills. So what does that mean for you in purchasing a house? If you purchase a $400,000 home in St. John's, what'll happen is they will take half of that sold price at $200,000 and they will make that your taxable value. They'll take the $200,000, they'll multiply it by 30 mills with their little formula you have, and your taxes would be $6,000. You're like, well, $6,000 still sounds a little high to me. Well, how about this? Consider this. If you go to Meridian Township where Okemos and Hazlitt are, your taxes would be double that at $12,000 for the year for a $400,000 house. So you definitely can save. If you move to the city of St. John's and the same thing were to happen at 40 mills, your taxes would be closer to $8,000, but still not quite as high as like what $12,000 would be on a $400,000 house. So if you bought a $200,000 house in St. John's, your taxes for the year would be like $3,000. Not that bad for your property taxes, right? Compared to some of the other places where your taxes could be double. So the cost of housing, just as far as the average price point and your taxes, it's going to be less in St. John's. So maybe consider expanding your search a little bit to the suburb. The next pro also has to do with housing, and it's a good data point. So pro number 6 is that house appreciation in St. John's is good. It's quite high. The house appreciation is quite high. Year over year from 2023 to 2024, the prices appreciated in St. John's 11%. So that's a good thing. You move there and your home prices are less, your taxes are less, and your home values go up. Now, depends on the market, right? The market right now is quite good. So hopefully prices will continue to appreciate, but it shows that people desire to move to St. John's when they come to the area. It's not just a stagnant place. The next con that I want to talk about with living in St. John's, this is a big one. So tough road conditions during the winter. I haven't really talked about this with the other the other suburbs, and here's why. There's a reason why I bring up the road conditions during the winter. Obviously, many of you know we are cold enough to get snow here in Michigan, okay? I think everybody knows that. And when the snow comes, you might live closer to cities or closer to areas where the snow falls on the highway. They have salt trucks there. It's easy for all the snow to get off the roads. And follow my Lansing snow drives if you want to see what the road conditions are like, because I do have videos on that. So the thing that's different about St. John's is that with that 127 expressway that I told you that goes north and south, when you drive north, okay, or even south, there's a lot of open room to where the wind moves from the east to the west. And when the snow blows and blows across, there's nothing to really trap it on either side. So what people find, especially if they're going up north as well, like during the winter season, is that it is tough to drive on the expressway because of the winds going east and west and the snow going on the highway. So then the roads might be a little bit more dangerous. So I've heard this from people who drive in St. John's regularly, that they say that like because of the road going north and south on 127, just know that like to allow yourself more time for that morning commute if you have to go to work. Especially if you had to commute up to Mount Pleasant, you go further north, like that's gonna be a tough drive if you had to drive during a snowstorm. My last pro has to do with the schools. I'll give it a pro. If you watch all my videos, guys might say, well, this is kind of an average pro. So if you go to niche.com, this is the site I always refer to because I can't tell you which school's the best, but I can say what a website tells you. So if you go to niche.com, so niche.com will say that St. John's has a B+ rating for their schools, which isn't bad. However, we've seen 5, 6, 7 schools that have A- rating, so a little bit higher. So St. John's has a B+. Part of that has to do with, from what I'm seeing, the reason why that grade is brought down has to do with its diversity, which is a con that I spoke about. So I think that brings the grade down on niche a little bit because that's one of the factors that they use. So you could see it as a good or a bad thing because it's going to be, I say that it's towards the upper tier of the schools. I think if you get to a B, B-, you're average within the area. So when you look at the classroom sizes in the schools though, your classroom sizes will be around 200 apiece. It's not the largest school system in the area, but your kid will still have more opportunity, I feel, in the schools. So it's not like it's so small that you have less opportunity. So around 200 per grade is what you can expect in the St. John's school system. So for my last con, I told you this one was important because it's something for you to think about. And I found this statistic super interesting because I hadn't realized this, but I'll explain to you even kind of my history with St. John's. And when I saw the stat, I was like, wow, this makes sense. So my final con, St. John's lack of growth. So I pulled the figures of the population in St. John's from 2014 until 2024. So let me start with the story first before I get into the stat. So the reason I looked up this statistic is because when I moved here in 2007, I would go to St. John's because I had friends that lived up in the area. So I would go up there quite frequently. And when I got there, they had a Walmart, the same Walmart that is there now was there back then. Then they had an Applebee's that they had just gotten. They had a Kmart. It seemed like they were growing from what I had heard. People were like, hey, we have an Applebee's, we have this. And it seemed like they were building several things there. This is back in 2007. When I drive up there now, in 2024, now it's 2025 now, so 18 years later, what I have found is that nothing has really changed. There hasn't been a whole lot that's been built. There's been some things that have closed due to COVID, but driving through there hasn't been a heck of a whole lot that's been built. And so I was going, I wonder what the population is like in the city of St. John's. So I did my research, and this is what I found, that in 2014, St. John's population was 7,900 people. And then in 2024, the population of St. John's was 7,700. So they've gone down 200 people in the last 10 years. And I'm like, that might make sense because corporations might not want to build a new business there if they see that the place isn't growing. If it's going down in population, that's not a good thing. It's something for you to be cautious of. And I'm not saying people are leaving St. John's and flooding out. I think there's not a lot of home building that's happening over there, so there's lack of growth with that, and that kind of tells me something. It kind of tells me that people's budgets in St. John's, they only go to a certain maximum. So if you're somebody watching this and you love luxury homes, there's not a lot of luxury homes. I mean, probably the nicest neighborhood you could be at in St. John's would be Bingham Farms, and they're building new homes, but they have some nice custom homes in that neighborhood. But the lack of growth can be concerning, because then you're like, okay, well, will the town, like, will it keep up in the next 10, 20 years? And then if I look to resell my house, will that value still stay? I mean, I still think it's hopeful that the appreciation went up 11% year over year, but as time goes on and things get older, will the lack of growth hurt St. John's? Well, we won't know until time continues to go on, right? So I hope you enjoyed this video about the pros and cons of living in St. John's. Maybe it gave you some things to think about. Maybe you never considered living in St. John's, Michigan, and after seeing this, you're like, maybe I need to start considering St. John's. And if you haven't connected with a realtor, don't forget to reach out to me. I'm more than available to be able to talk with you. So call me, text me, email me, or schedule a Zoom. All my information again is in the description below. And then if you liked what you saw here, please like this video. Also subscribe to my channel so that you can be notified when a new episode of Lansing, Michigan Life goes live. And we go live once or twice a week. So you're definitely gonna wanna hit subscribe for that. Okay, so thank you again for watching this. And until next time, make it a great day. Take care.